Alright folks, welcome back to another video right here on Jason's Wrestling Channel. Today I'm going to talk to you about Randy Macho Man Savage. Oh yeah, the Macho Man. His father was Angelo Poffo. Angelo Poffo was a professional wrestler. Now Randy Savage was his son, and he wanted to be a baseball player originally, but it didn't happen because he wasn't good enough. So then he became a professional wrestler, and he was wrestling around in the independent wrestling companies. And he was going to a gym where he met his future wife, Miss Elizabeth. And then he signed with the World Wrestling Federation, and he was trying to find a manager. And so he didn't want Bobby the Brain Heenan or Slick or Classy Freddie Blassie, because that's who wanted to manage him. Instead, he brought Elizabeth onto the scene and made her his manager. They were also married in real life, by the way. And she was known as Miss Elizabeth. And then he won the Intercontinental Championship, held that for about a year. WrestleMania 3 came, and he defended that title against Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And he lost that title with the help of George the Animal Steele. Now, George the Animal Steele had a thing for Elizabeth. He would take her to the, he would pick her up and take her to the back. Savage would get upset and see this, and he didn't like it at all. And after he lost the title, he had a match with George the Animal Steele on the Saturday Night Main Event, to where if Steele won, Elizabeth would have become his manager. But that never happened. Macho Man won, and she stayed with the Macho Man. WrestleMania 4, he won a tournament. He wrestled 3 times. He wrestled One Man Gang, Natural Butchery, and Ted DiBiase in the main event. He ended up beating Ted DiBiase in the end with the help of Hulk Hogan, and he became the World Wrestling Federation champion. And he held the WWF title for about a year. Him and Hogan formed a tag team called the Mega Powers. And Savage was very jealous because he didn't like the idea of Elizabeth being their manager. Both of their men. He didn't like the fact that she was managing Hogan too. And Hogan thought of her as a sister. So on a Saturday Night Main Event, Savage went over the top rope, landed on top of Elizabeth by accident. And Hogan picked Elizabeth up, took her to the back to get her medical attention. Savage was dragged back into the ring by the big boss man Akeem, and he basically got his butt kicked, and he lost the match. So then he goes back, and he hit Hogan in the head with the belt because he was upset that he was left there by himself to wrestle both guys. And then Elizabeth had to choose whose corner she wanted to be in for WrestleMania 5 because the main event was Hogan and Savage. She couldn't choose whose corner, so they put her in a neutral corner. That means a corner by herself. And she continued to manage both guys. So eventually she became a distraction in the match. The referee had to send her away from the ring and told Savage to get in the ring because she was causing a lot of complications in the match. Hogan ended up winning the WWF Championship at WrestleMania 5. And then Savage didn't want anything to do with Elizabeth anymore. And Elizabeth managed Hulk Hogan for a while. And Savage had Sherry as his manager. So he continued to feud with Hogan for a while, and Elizabeth managed Hulk Hogan. But then eventually she split from the wrestling scene, and Savage would continue to wrestle. And at WrestleMania 6, Hogan and Sherry would wrestle against Sapphire and Dusty Rhodes. So Dusty Rhodes brought Elizabeth in for one night, and it really got under Savage's skin because he couldn't stand the fact that she was managing Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire. Savage couldn't stand. He was jealous as hell. It was funny. So then Sapphire and Dusty Rhodes would end up beating Savage and Sherry at WrestleMania 6. And then Elizabeth left the wrestling scene, and Macho Man would become the Macho King, Randy Savage. And he wrestled under the name the Macho King because he beat Hacksaw Jim Duggan for the crown. He took Sherry's purse with a brick in it and hit Duggan in the head. And Duggan had a rematch against him, but he never won the crown back. And then he would be the king of wrestling all the way until WrestleMania 7. He had a career-ending match with the Ultimate Warrior. And he lost the match against the Warrior. Warrior ended up winning. Elizabeth was in the audience watching the match. So Sherry was pounding on Savage because, Savage lost and her career was over as well. She couldn't manage it anymore, but she managed to stick around. And then Elizabeth just came out of nowhere, threw Sherry off of Savage. Savage turned around, didn't know she was there. And then he was confused because he thought she was hitting him, but she wasn't. So then he gave her a hug, and they reunited. And then at SummerSlam 1991, now this was for the fans, okay? Then they were already married in real life. They had a wedding, for the fans, because a lot of fans knew that they were married in real life, but some fans didn't. So they had a wedding in the ring in 1991 where Savage and Elizabeth would get married. And then she would manage them for a while. And then in 92, they divorced and she split the wrestling scene. And Savage would become an announcer because Vince McMahon, he was looking for younger talent. And Savage's career was winding down. And he hated it. He couldn't stand sitting in the announce booth. So finally his contract came up with the World Wrestling Federation. And he signed with WCW. Because he wanted to wrestle. He talked to Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan got him in the WCW. And he ended up wrestling over there. Eventually, Elizabeth would come back onto the scene. And Hogan and Savage would form their tag team again. Now, this time they were divorced. So he wasn't really as jealous of her like he was in the WWF. So they reformed the Mega Powers with Elizabeth as their manager. And Elizabeth managed them. And eventually Hogan created the NWO. Hogan became a bad guy. And he basically took Elizabeth and made her become part of the NWO. She didn't want to join the NWO. She wanted to be with Randy Savage. They forced her to be part of the NWO. And then eventually at Halloween Havoc one year, Hogan and Savage wrestled. Hogan beat Savage again. And then Savage would leave for a while. And then he would come back. And he would wrestle in the NW. He joined the NWO. And he became an NWO member. And then him and Hogan started arguing again. And they had a feud to where they were getting in each other's faces and they couldn't stand each other. They wanted to kick each other out of the NWO, which was kind of hilarious because Hogan was the leader of it anyway. And eventually, Savage just left the NWO and just started wrestling as an independent again. And then him and Elizabeth split. Now, Elizabeth started managing Lex Luger, which was a mistake, I think. And Savage had a new girlfriend that came to the ring with him, a little blonde haired girl. And Luger felt funny for working with Elizabeth. He asked Savage if he had his blessing. And Savage goes, "You have my blessing." He goes, "You can work with me." He goes, "That was a long time ago and stuff, and it's over." And Savage would just continue with his career. And then he left WCW. And he left the wrestling scene for a while. For quite a while. And then he got married again to somebody else, to his high school sweetheart. And he was in his Jeep. And he had a heart attack. And Randy Savage would pass away in 2003. And if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. And if you like Rockstar theme band, subscribe to Flash Gordon Rockstar theme. And have a great day.